This is Missy Lynx, and you're listening to the Indie Sports Car Podcast.
Welcome, ICP fans, to the beginning of this week's show, a one-on-one conversation with me, and I got to say, it's a privilege for me to introduce him, Mr. Bob Varsha, voice of F1 for a lot of us for a lot of years. Now he's doing broadcasting for the Formula E series. Mr. Varsha, welcome to the show, sir.
Oh, please call me Bob, Frank, and thanks for having me on.
Well, it's an honor. It's out of respect, but I would be happy to call you Bob. So yep. Robert, spin me a yarn.
Where do I begin?
We were just talking for a good half hour about some fun stuff. So, and then a big vacuum truck came by and screwed that all up. So this is take 3, my rare take 3. So, what's the most takes you've ever had trying to record something in TV land?
The first race of my first full season of Formula One in 1989, working with David Hobbs, I actually began, my first race was the Austrian Grand Prix in 1987, when Sir Jackie Stewart, who was hosting for ESPN at that time, decided he couldn't get to the race. So I got called in, did the race. The following year, however, they paired Chris Economaki with David Hobbs. So I came along in 89. Because Chris suffered from racer's disease, meaning he was completely deaf from all the noise he'd been listening to his life. So he couldn't hear the producer telling him when to go to commercial break, and Dave would have to jump all over him to get to the commercials. So they decided that the Economaki-Hobbs pairing wasn't working out, and so they brought me in 89, and off we went on Easter Sunday to Rio de Janeiro for the Brazilian Grand Prix, where it was about 129 degrees Fahrenheit on race day. And of course, back then, being good cable sportscasters, we wore jackets and ties and made the initial mistake of wearing a blue shirt. And we did the stand-up on tape up on top of the timing tower because our broadcast booth was in a different location, and they were just going to roll the tape to get us on the air and then pick up the commentary live. So I started this grandiose introduction, welcome to Brazil, and stumbled here and screwed that up, and then maybe Hobbs would screw something up, and then we do it again. I don't remember how many takes we did exactly, but I do know we had to stop at one point because it was so hot and humid that we were beginning to sweat through our shirts. So we had these big dark blotches on our shirts. So the producer looked us up and down and said, okay, let's just wait till you completely sweat through the shirt. It'll be a uniform color, and we'll carry on. And that's eventually what we did, and we did get the open taped shortly before the start of the race, and then ran like hell to our announce booth. So, God, how many? I don't know. It's kind of a running joke between just about all the other commentators I've ever worked with to see who can get it done in one take and who else has to deal with doing it over and over and over again. And you'd be amazed. I mean, some of the greatest legends in television have had to do their share of takes from time to time. It's just part of the deal.
I think Tom Brokaw is one of the funniest ones to listen to. Because he's live he used to be live anyway, and how he would say things, it's like, what?
Yeah, somewhere on the internet you could probably find there was a blooper reel years and years and years ago of the great Orson Welles, one of the giants of the cinema, producer, writer, director, actor, and he used to do commercials. Everybody remembers his "We will sell no wine before it's time" punchline, but he also did some kind of a food product. I can't remember. It was like green vegetables or something. And there's this hilarious tape of him flubbing or questioning every line and then trying it again and blowing up because it didn't make sense to him, and on and on and on. There's another one of Casey Kasem, the late Casey, the great DJ, doing his top 40 radio show every weekend. He too just Who wrote this shit? On and on and on. Just
about the
over.
dedication to the dog, right?
Right. Mhm.
I've heard that. I've heard that many times. Yeah. Opie and Anthony used to play that a lot. I'm like, I used to get a kick out of that. Like, who's it?
Mhm.
I gotta do a dedication to a damn dead dog, and then sound energetic about this.
Oh, yeah,
Jesus.
right.
That's good stuff, though. But I mean, like I mean, a lot of people they dog on Paul Tracy because he wasn't exactly the most loved IndyCar driver when he was behind the wheel. Let's face it.
Mhm.
I mean, I was personally a Little Al fan. That's what got me into IndyCar '92. But and Tracy was always his rival every race. He was always giving him, Anyway, those big round glasses just, But he was such a great character, And IndyCar is really getting back to that. A lot of great, personalities and a lot of really good personalities coming up, through the junior ranks. So IndyCar's got a bright future as far as race personality goes.
You need that. You need personalities. You need, good guys and bad guys, and
exactly
vendettas and rivalries, and that kind of thing. The occasional scandal that may have nothing to do with what happens on the racetrack, but it's all part of the show.
Yeah, I mean, just like the Hinchcliffe bump last year, that was a big deal. I mean, he gets the pole 2 years before, and he gets bumped 2 years later. I mean,
how often have we seen that?
I mean, Ryan Hunter-Ray paying for a seat after getting bumped. I mean, I'm great. It's just great that bump.
SD cars winning one year and not qualifying the next. Bobby Rahal went through that once with True Sports.
And,
it's just
Andretti with 5 cars the one year.
Yeah,
2011, I believe it was.
Yeah, and everybody remembers that, which is why we've had this big debate recently about whether they ought to set aside 25 starting spots for teams that support the whole season and leave 8 for the Johnnies come lately who kind of scrape the money together to be there.
Yeah, I mean, and
down on that.
I mean, and like instantly my brain goes, nope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I mean, like, I'm just conditioned that way. And that's I think IndyCar, the one special thing about it is the stubbornness is monumental. Really. And it's to the point where I respect it as a culture to just be as stubborn as humanly possible. And and it's almost good in a way because it does protect traditions by creating them. Basically, a tradition doesn't become one until it's something for a while, and then being stubborn like they are and not changing a thing makes things tradition. So, and you can't break tradition. So that and that's where it stops with most IndyCar drivers. I mean, it does. I mean, and Jay Fry's done a great job of knowing that we're like that, but kind of, doing the right thing without, without poo-pooing on the tradition of the sport. And I think honestly, the NASCAR decline, I think they lost their way with that part of their fan base and why they loved it so much, and then they went like that with it. And now the fan base isn't attached to that anymore. But IndyCar now as far as the F1 audience goes, you are my connection to the F1 world that I can relate to because you're always the only American either there talking about it because there's never anyone driving it. We finally have an American team, but no Americans racing it. So. You see what I mean there? I don't know if the F1 crowd feels the same way. If there's certain traditions I'm not aware about because I'm not in that type of that deep into it as far as living it to where I can relate to it more because I have drivers that do you see what I mean here?
Yeah, I definitely do. And traditions are part of every form of motorsport or every walk of life. You just have to pick which traditions matter. I mean, one of the ones in Formula One, for example, is the racetracks. Do we go where we can make the most money, like China, Singapore, places like that, Russia, or, do we do so at the expense of the classic races at Monza and Silverstone and Monaco and so forth? I mean, can you imagine? I mean, right now they're saying the Barcelona track that has become a classic in Formula One is out of contract. It probably won't be back next year. It'll be replaced by another classic track that we haven't seen in a long time, which is Zandvoort in the Netherlands, if they can get the track up to spec. But yeah, it's that kind of thing. What's important on balance? Do you need to have?
I don't mean to interrupt you. Are you talking about Circuit de Catalunya?
Yeah, the Circuit de Catalunya is out of contract, and
really?
The race next weekend. That's their last event under their current deal. And like a lot of other tracks, they're under tremendous financial pressure. They've lost their subsidies from the Spanish government, which just about every other track in the world has, with the exception of the United States, until COTA managed to get its annual subsidy from the state of Texas, and even that may be in jeopardy now. So, yeah, it's a real high wire act in Formula One, as long as the financial structure stays the way it has been previously. I mean, it is just stratospheric levels of expense, but that's the way it's been throughout the end of the Bernie Ecclestone era.
They lost the Germany GP for a year.
Can't pay for it. Yep,
exactly. I mean, Hockenheim, they were going to do it, but it just was too late. And not having Nürburgring in the season just feels wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And even the talk of Silverstone not being on the season is blasphemy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so that's what I mean about traditions. You kind of have to decide what's important. Is history important? Is a legacy important? Or is it just about the balance sheet?
Yeah, I mean, is it just about the bottom line of the mighty dollar? Like, and this whole, the drivers who race for the entire season, they get in, and then you got the other spots. The only reason that's coming up is because team owners get a certain percentage of money at the end of the year when they have a car that does the entire season.
Right.
And if they get bumped out of Indy, they lose money at the end of the year, and that's why they're pushing for it. Bottom line, there's no other reason behind it. That's it.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And then a lot of the sponsor contracts have "we must be at Indy" written into them, which is why you get all the wheeling and dealing going on with the cars that are actually in the show, as opposed to the big money operations that don't make the show. And hey, this is racing with your big boy pants on. You go out there, you put it on the line, you make the show or you don't, and if you want to wheel and deal afterward, fine. But just personally, I can't see this idea of guaranteeing 25 slots to the teams that do the whole season. I mean, what's that going to do to your qualifying? It really doesn't matter if I'm going to be in, no matter how fast I go, as long as I'm in the top 25. I mean, where's the drama? Where's the tension? Where's bump day going to be? That's just, I don't understand. Well, I guess I do understand the reasoning. I just refuse to get behind it.
Oh yeah, I mean, like as soon as I heard it, I knew it wouldn't happen at all. And I mean, honestly, I was talking to Derek Walker after Jay Fry took over at Road Atlanta for the Petit Le Mans, the last race. His Falcon Tire Porsche was there because I had to see it go. It was my favorite car. It was my favorite sports car of all time. So.
Great.
And Derek Walker and I got to spend a good amount of time there because it rained like it normally does every Petit, And, and they actually won that Petit Le Mans, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they actually won it 2 years in a row, as I recall. They were aces around that place.
They really were. I mean, the rest of the season, it's like, where are you? But Petit, it's like you even beat P1 over here. The prototypes over here, guys. Good job.
That's the way it happens sometimes.
Tell me about it. So, now I heard in an interview one time that you were talking about hard to talk to drivers, and you were talking about easy to talk to drivers. And you said Alex Zanardi, and I wasn't shocked about that, but I was a little surprised too, because talk about so talk about just um your I guess your relationship with Alex Zanardi, since it had to have grown over such a long period of times. If you're if you remember him that well and that quick, to say he was
Sure.
easiest to talk to.
Oh yeah, no, I had a good relationship with Alex. I mean, obviously he's a really easy guy to like. A great story, great sense of humor. The way he came back from that devastating accident, losing both of his legs, to not only race again, but to find a new sport and remake his entire body, and become a gold medal Paralympic winning athlete, is fabulous. About a year after he came back, I went to Monaco to interview Alex at his home, and then on his boat, and he was. I mean, I was just gobsmacked listening to him talk, with a smile on his face about how he and his brother-in-law, who happens to be a doctor, will have too many glasses of wine, and then his brother-in-law will start talking about how Alex came back from the dead, how he was gone, and they brought him back, and they'll laugh about it. He'll make jokes about how he can change his prosthetic legs to be as tall as he wants, or how he can take one of the legs and turn the knee 180 degrees, meaning the sole of his foot is pointing up, and he can place his wine glass or his coffee cup there on the bottom of his foot, so he always has an end table right there with him. I mean, a guy like that. At one point, a publisher of sports books called me and said, "Can you do a book with Alex?" And so I called Alex and we talked about it. And he said, "Let me think about it." And he came back and he said, "You know what? I'd really like to do it with an Italian author." And I understood that completely. So I felt bad that we wouldn't get to do it together. But the book is terrific. It's called My Sweetest Victory, and I recommend it to everybody. I mean, he's just an inspiring guy.
Yeah, I mean, like when he came when he drove in the Daytona 24, this past January, it was I mean, if you didn't get a little bit emotional seeing him,
Sure.
just jumping into that first change, and then all of a sudden there's a little bit of drama that and then they had to switch and go to the other $40,000 steering wheel, and then that worked, and he took off, and then the wheels spin off, and he takes off. You just went, yeah, you stood up and cheered, and like I haven't stood up and cheered like that just for a great pit stop in a long time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what a great Rolex that was this year, having Zanardi there, having Alonso there, having so many guys who were there for the first time who had such great stories. I mean, that's why I fell in love with sports cars from the very beginning of my career, because there's so many drivers and they come from so many different backgrounds. And it's not, I mean, yeah, it's professional, but sports cars have always progressed on the backs of well-resourced enthusiasts, and not so much on pure professional racing teams in the sense that you see them in perhaps IndyCar or Formula One or NASCAR or whatever. The good amateur with the right money behind him can get out there and race with the superstars of the sport, and that leads to some great lineups, some great stories, and some great racing.
Yeah, I mean, like Michael Shank, Jack Harvey, great example.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
See it over and over again. And you can do things in sports cars that you wouldn't often find in other forms of the motorsports. Look at Michael Shank and what he's doing with that all-female driver lineup.
Oh, that's great. I love it.
Yeah. And it's fun.
I mean, we definitely need more women in racing, and in the top tier of racing. Definitely need less men in the top tier of racing saying bad things about women being in the top tier of racing, and talking to you there, old buddy over there on the F1 world.
Yeah, Helmut Marko and his comments about how women may not be physically up to it.
Yeah, my wife's all over it. She hates the whole women's league thing, and I like the women's league thing because it gives them an opportunity to race. I didn't like how they did the selection because they made it they made it feel like it was a beauty pageant or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And the way they brought it together with really no women at the head of it, which was a big mistake, I thought.
Mm.
But I think they did correct a lot of things since. It doesn't matter to her. But
Well,
you
and a
know,
lot of other people too. And
yeah.
I have I'm of mixed feelings about the whole thing. I don't think you prove that women can compete with men through a series that doesn't allow them to compete with men. I mean, I think every young driver faces serious challenges. And if you don't make it as a young driver, it's not necessarily just because you're a female. I mean, it's about lap time. It's about not bending the race car. It's about so many other things.
And luck.
And luck. And money, frankly. And if you have what it takes to succeed, you're going to succeed. I mean, a guy wrote a book once. It's called Circus Before Dawn. And it was about a phenomenally talented female racing driver by the name of Dawn. And it was it's a massive book. It took me forever to get through it, but it's an interesting perspective on the whole idea of a female racer and how she is perceived. And I have a lot of sympathy for the girls who are trying to come up, but I think a lot of the challenges they face are no different than the young men face.
No.
And I'm not sure that this all-female series ticks all the boxes, if you will, in terms of what it's going to take to get more opportunities for women out there. I will say this, if they start turning out series champions who cannot progress to the next level, then there's a serious problem. And that'll be the next thing they have to work on, whether it's discrimination or just, the ability not being there. At least the girls will know what they have to work on.
Definitely.
It's a process.
So, and then speaking about women racing, can you talk a little bit about how it's been like to have Simona Di Silvestro in the series that you cover? I mean, isn't she great?
She raced for the Andretti team for a while. She's not now. She races in V8 supercars, I believe.
Oh, she did change over. I'm so sorry. I feel it.
That's okay. Simona was the first woman. I covered her when I did Toyota Atlantics for years and years.
Oh, wow. And that was, okay. Right on.
Simona, along with Catherine Legg, were the first couple of women that I thought of their generation really had what it takes, including physical strength and everything else. I mean, I know Lynn St. James did very well. Janet Guthrie was the trailblazer, but among the generation that I was most familiar with, I thought Simona really, and Catherine, really, had it going on.
What do you think about Pippa Mann? I mean, she's always, makes the show or doesn't. Well, she got bumped last year, but
yeah.
I mean, the attention that she brings is good. But as far as a racing talent, where would you stack her compared to a Simona and a Catherine Legg?
I think Pippa's talented. I haven't seen her enough to make any kind of judgment about what the ultimate upside is for her. I mean, she's obviously got some of the things you need, including the ability to attract sponsorship and to create a message for the media, because that's part of it too, as you know, on and off the track. So having said that, Pippa's one of those women who is dealing with all the challenges that racers, male and female, have, and without, comparing talents. I mean, look at Stefan Wilson, another talented driver who struggles to get a program together. Looks like he's not going to be able to do it this year at Indy, but it's a very similar kind of situation. It's not necessarily because you're a woman, and I think Pippa would be the first to say that. It's the old, a good driver still needs a good program. You still need a great race car. Mm-hmm. I mean, a great driver can make a bad car better. He's not necessarily going to make it a winner.
But Al Unser Jr. 1992, I just got to throw it out there. A great driver can make probably the worst car ever built, still a winner.
Well, we'd like to think that, that makes for a great story. And we see it from time to time. But I think, on balance, you can only go so far with a car. If you're more talented, you're going to take it farther. Whether you're going to take it to the top step of the podium or not, I don't know. All these shades of gray and all these nuances in people's careers. So there's no one thing, I think, that, flips the switch one way or another.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. I mean, and like I see all the time, like she probably makes, she is probably the number one reason why like women get into like little girls get into IndyCar racing, because I see it all the time. She does great with the kids. She's like, that's why like Connor Daly, for example. I would say people are gonna look. People know my stance on Connor enough. I'm friends with Connor. He knows it's fine. He's so. Connor and Pip are kind of like the same, I think. Like Connor is great for the series because the fans love him. He's a good draw. He's very marketable. I mean, he's got a chin that can dig a ditch. So
yep. Get open beer cans with that chin.
Tell me about it, and then crush him. So,
yep.
But it's just just like his excitement to be in IndyCar is something you can is easily relatable to the fans, because they do too, right? That's
sure.
So, but he's getting to do it. So but however, I mean, I've watched him do some great driving at Lime Rock. Wow, what are you doing, Lime Rock, Connor? Hey, my point being is,
when he crashed, you talking about?
Yeah, well, the downhill right, but he went left. It happens. It happens. I mean, James French and him were teamed up for about 2 years or so.
Yeah,
James French was always giving him a great car, and Connor could either get it back home or crash it. And then Pato goes over, and then Pato can show you what natural talent is. They win every race, and then he comes over to Indy Lights and shows the world. And like Pato and Felix Rosenquist are so close. And that's why I love IndyCar right now, because we have the Dixons and the Will Powers going at it. Then we got the Rosenquists and the Pato Awards going at it. And it's just, it's from top to bottom. You don't know who's going to win. It's all great talent. And then you look at the Formula One world, Bob, and we've been waiting for it to change the culture. We've been waiting for a new winner would be cool, or a new winning team would be nice. But it just seems like when the cars come up off and they uncrate them, comes with a manual saying this car can go, and there's a number. And if your driver doesn't make 98% of this number, he's gone. And basically you figure out who's going to win this race by what the cars are uncrated at the track 3 days before the race. Yeah.
Well, that's true, but not all those cars came from the same place. Formula One, in a way that I don't think any other motorsport is like an arms race or a space race. It's a garage and factory competition as much as it is an athletic competition on the track. And of course, the ability to compete in an arms race depends on the availability of the funding to do that. And that's to me, is the central problem that Formula One faces, is an unbalanced financial system. The biggest teams, the most successful teams, the richest teams get most of the money out of the purse. And I'm talking tens, approaching hundreds of millions of dollars.
I know.
While the less successful teams are stuck in this downward spiral because they get less money out of the prize purse. And so they don't get the results because they don't have the investment, and they can't get the sponsorship. So it's something I think that Chase Carey and Liberty are working on. I think they realize it. Certainly Ross Braun realizes it because he's been through it with the mighty and the meek in terms of race teams. They have got to find a way to make it more financially equitable for all the teams up and down the pit lane. And I think they'll see an instant burst of good health, including more teams wanting in, more manufacturers wanting in. if they can slow down this unchecked spending and this unfair financial balance or imbalance, that's where a lot of that lack of drama in Formula One comes from. I mean, you get a team like Racing Point, the old Force India team, might have 400 people in the factory. Mercedes has 1,200 people in the factory. It's just not a fair fight. And yet they go out and they do fight, and you're not going to win, but you do the best job you can, and you hope that somebody says, you know what, you're a good bunch. I'm going to throw some money behind you, and maybe you get the chance to fight with the big ones. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's kind of predictable right now, and I love Formula One as much as anybody, but you got to see it warts and all.
Yeah, exactly. And I try to see as much as I possibly can, but unfortunately, we don't get enough of it. So but over the last 5 years, kind of, like when we started doing this 5 years ago, my frame of reference or my point of view on things is way different now, because I understand how everything works and how everything kind of goes, and like and again, that's the big reason why we have so many junior racers on, because the best part about racing is the human element, right? And the long stories and just every story is different, every pathway is different, and all the different things that have to kind of like go right or go wrong, or what you go through to get where you want to go, and all that great stuff. And it's just great stories and everything, and and then you kind of watch their progress, and them win, them lose, and you feel good for them, you feel bad for them, and I don't know how many times we've said, if we hit the lottery, how many drivers we would, how many teams we'd own and drivers we'd have, because like Parker Thompson's like a perfect example. All the talent in the world and about the worst luck I've ever seen. So, but
that's definitely part of it.
Exactly. I'm sorry, but but right in your wheelhouse, though, Formula One. I love talking about Formula One a lot, because I had Richard Uden on. He used to be don't want to get this wrong. Williams wheel guy. He was the wheel technician for Williams for about 10 years. He was at the factory in England. That's where he worked. He didn't travel with the team. but he was on a few times, so we've gotten to learn a whole lot of like just technical stuff. I still don't know what the ERS looks like. Do you, Bob? Do you know what it looks like?
Do I know what it looks like?
Yeah, the ERS.
I know what it is, and I know when I see it. Yeah, how it works, I'm not quite sure, but I know what it does.
I mean, but I've only ever gotten to see a blurred. It's like somebody streaking across a football field and they blur them. That's what the ERS system on the side of a Formula One is. I can see everything else, but then there's the gold box that's all blurry. I don't know what it is.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about the MGUs, the energy recovery systems. That's a great example of what I was talking about earlier. It becomes such an arms race, and we hear time and time again people saying, look, we're spending a fortune on these systems that are really interested to the dweebs and the folks who really get into the technology of the whole thing, but does it really matter to the guy who just wants to pay his money and come and see a great race? I mean, I'm talking about whether it's jalopies or sprint cars or super modifieds or stock cars, Indy cars, Formula One, whatever it might happen to be. People want to see a good race. They want to hear a good story. They want to be entertained. And I don't know if they're entertained by the fact that, that car going by has this whiz-bang, Star Wars type technology. Having said that, I mean, a certain level of technology is great. I mean, the hybrid Formula One cars and the hybrid LMP1 cars in that race at Le Mans.
Sure.
They're doing phenomenal things, going faster than they ever did before, on a third less fuel than they ever did before. So, that gets the attention of the manufacturers right away.
Sure.
But, for the extra $50 million, I don't know that I need to have some kind of really crazy investment in some kind of a dude. I'm struggling to find an example of something that really doesn't need to be on the car because it doesn't affect the fan in the grandstands and the entertainment value of the race.
Exactly right. Yeah, I mean, because like by the end of the race, if there's no racing going on, like, I mean, there was a show that was that followed F1 last. I think it wasn't last season. It was season before. I think it was Haas's first season. It might have been, or second. They were following Haas pretty closely because the big drama was will Haas beat Renault towards the end of the season for the manufacturer championship, so they get a little bit more money at the end of the year. That was the big drama at the end of that F1 season. That's what you got. And it's like, we're going backwards, guys, because it was bad 5 years ago, and I'm a patient guy. If I can see that you're trying to fix the problem, but now I don't know, are you? I hope you are.
Yeah.
Because I don't care what manufacturer in fifth is going to win, Missy on the show, she calls it who won the third place, first place this week or something, That was back when Mercedes won every race. Now it's the first place, fifth place or something. I don't know. So at least we have two teams. Ferrari.
Yes.
So,
and maybe we'll have a third one in Red Bull.
Well, I mean, if Max Verstappen can ever stop being Max Verstappen so much, and start being more of a,
Speaking of on TV shows, do you see the Netflix series Drive to Survive?
Oh yeah.
Same kind of deal. Haas plays a big role in that, which is cool, and it gives you a sense of the tension and the intensity of Formula One. Although Mercedes and Ferrari would not allow the cameras in their garages and wouldn't be a part of the story. But I think it's really well done. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I noticed that right away, and I was a little bit upset because I wanted to hear a lot of Kimi Räikkönen, and I got none.
Yeah.
I mean, is Kimi Räikkönen not just gold every second he talks?
He sure is. He's gold sometimes when he doesn't talk because that speaks louder than words.
Well, I mean, you can't understand anything he says anyway. So
yeah,
you got to read into the body language, right? And I love how, he's always, helping Vettel out, making sure Vettel gets a toe in qualifying. I can't believe I heard Vettel complaining that he didn't qualify well last week because he got no toe through his. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's qualifying, and you're talking about you didn't get a toe. Like, Vettel, what are you doing? Shut up. What happened? But I mean, and then, but Christian, he brings it up all the time because Kimi finds out he's getting fired at the end of the year, and he wins half the races. Ferrari wins for the rest of the year. I loved it.
And should have won more. I always felt bad when people use that. Well, he didn't get good enough results. Well, when you're in a position like Kimi Räikkönen was in, you're not going to get the results because the team is going to tie one arm behind your back, and you're there to support their number one driver, which is Sebastian Vettel. I host a small cruise to the Monaco Formula One race every year. This will be my third year doing it. About 200 people, and I give little lectures on Formula One. So a couple of years ago, we went, and I'm sitting in the grandstand with this bunch of fans that are on the cruise with me around me, and I'm talking about this. Okay, so and so, the order changed, someone pitted, and then Raikkonen was leading the race, was in a perfect position to win, and then suddenly he comes around and he pulls aside and lets Sebastian by, and a whole bunch of heads turned toward me, as if to say, "WTF? What was that?" And I said, well, I imagine they just told Kimi to let Sebastian by because they want Sebastian to score, to protect his points lead or close in on Lewis. I can't remember the situation in the points, but it was definitely Sebastian over Kimi.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a lot of trouble explaining that to some of the people on this cruise who weren't dyed-in-the-wool Formula One fans. And I think if I were Kimi and I were going into a contract negotiation, and somebody says, "Well, you didn't win very often," I think it'd be tough to avoid getting up and punching somebody. I'm not going to win races when you tell me to pull aside.
Yeah, like, I mean, I think he talked like that because he always just didn't understand what was going on around. Like, wait, what? What do I do? Why?
He just didn't care.
I should have won, but I didn't win.
Yeah, right.
Like, he probably talked just fine when he first got in the series.
Always been a phenomenon. I mean, a guy with fewer than 24 starts in any kind of car who suddenly gets into a Sauber Formula One car and dives right in at the deep end and battles with all the big boys. He was phenomenal, and is.
Yeah, I mean, who's he with? Alfa Romeo now? Is that who he's with?
Yeah, Alfa Romeo, the former Sauber team.
Yep. And yeah, I mean, and it's just a shame. Like I mean, Charles looked like everybody was very happy that he got the job, and I was like, if he starts winning, he won't.
Well, he's another great example. I mean, they told him to stay behind Sebastian in where was it, in China, and the team came out and said, well, Charles has every reason to be mad with us. Yes, we instituted team orders. We told him to hold station. And, I think we saw some more of that more recently in where we just go, Baku, Azerbaijan.
Yep.
I think Leclerc could have won that race, but they screwed up the pit strategy, left him out on the tires too long. And I don't know if that was because they wanted to make sure he slotted in behind Sebastian. But if they did, I mean, it's a lot to answer for.
I mean, honestly, I've seen that more times. I'd say 10 more times than I've seen team orders, blatant team orders like that. You just see the pit stop strategy. You see it with Bottas constantly. Mercedes does it constantly with Hamilton and Bottas. They're always trying to keep Bottas behind Hamilton, always letting Hamilton come in first. I remember Hamilton coming into a pit one time, and he had to wait for, it wasn't Bottas, it was
Nico Rosberg.
I think it might have been the year Nico just didn't care and would literally. Remember the one race where Nico comes in and literally just never turned the wheel and went right into Hamilton and used Hamilton to turn, never got a penalty for it, won the race, took Hamilton out. He won the championship. That was that year, and I really think he just didn't give an S about team orders or anything, and that's the only reason he won that championship. And then he quits, and then he retires because he knew I'm done in this. I'm done in F1 now after doing that stunt.
Yeah.
And that's what I saw.
Number one driver is one of those traditions we were talking about earlier. Being the number one driver. When you mentioned, some driver trying to mess with Hamilton, recall the McLaren days when Fernando Alonso sat in the pits, knowing that Hamilton was double stacked behind him, and he was going to hold up and not allow Hamilton to get his tire change and go out. I think it was in qualifying, and Hamilton wasn't going to get another run because Alonso was taking too long. That was the year of the McLaren-Ferrari espionage case and $100 million in fines and team rivalries and a lot of anger and all the stuff that makes us love Formula One. just all the soap operas.
It really is, and that's F1's biggest problem because they have a lot of it. It's conveying it to the average fan. I think is their biggest problem because they are so technologically advanced, but they don't ever talk about it. They don't teach anybody about anything. I couldn't believe I found out that they use a different wheel nut for qualifying in the race. Who knew? I didn't know that.
It's all about managing the air and moving quickly and.
Yeah, like the difference in the race nut and the qualifying nut is about what a tenth of a gram.
Oh yeah. As my old colleague Steve Matchett would say, it all matters.
It all matters.
It's all weight is the enemy of speed, and
exactly.
I said that these little technological nuances only appeal to the nerds. Well, in that, I include myself as a nerd because I think this stuff is fascinating.
Sure.
And I think that's a part of the story that's underappreciated is the miraculous technologies that they come up with. Again, I'm not saying it's going to entertain the average fan, but it's definitely Star Wars kind of stuff.
But what I'm saying is, if they can find a way to channel that kind of information to the average fan,
yep.
I mean, we always say the public's dumb and everything, but an individual's smart, and engineering is interesting. Whether you think it is while you don't know, you realize you are interested in it.
Right.
It's almost like once you find out you are interested in engineering, you stop. It's it's like people. It's like wait. I was just doing math. Whew, let me step back for a second.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is awesome. This is human accomplishment here. This is good stuff. And these guys that pilot these things. I mean, it. you can't just jump in and take off. You're also. I mean, it takes a lot of. It takes a lot of cojones. Let's just say it that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, to get behind a how many $1 million car, and and when you wreck that, I can't even imagine what that must feel like. I can't imagine what.
I always thought that was the difference between real professional racing drivers and guys who have to fix it if they break it.
Sure.
A pro racing driver can crash the car and walk away from it and say, okay, get another one. Whereas a guy like me, say, if I'm out driving my racing car, I don't want to hurt this thing. I don't want to have to pay for it and fix it. I'm just going to be really careful with it. Pros don't have that gene. They don't have to worry about that.
No. We get a flat tire. It's it is the day's story. I got a flat tire. So,
gosh, there's so many stories and that's Formula One too. Is that whole that Rockstar mentality. I remember when Scott Speed was racing for Toro Rosso and left the team finally, was ushered out and went to NASCAR. And I think one of his first races, he walked out to his race car on the pit lane and was looking around for his helmet. And he asked one of the mechanics who was with the car, he said, "Where's my helmet?" The mechanic said, "I don't know. Where'd you leave it?" He said, "Well, it's in the garage." And the mechanic said, "Well, that's where your helmet is then. Go and get it." He's used to a guy walking up behind him with his helmet. And another time at Le Mans, we were standing in the Audi Death Star. I mean, Audi spends Formula One kind of money back in the day on the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And one of their drivers, I won't say who, my colleague Calvin Fish said to one of the team management, he said, who's the driver who's the neediest? I mean, who do you really have to look after? And the guy said, "Oh, without question." And he mentioned the driver's name. And he said the reason is he's a Formula One veteran. And the Formula One guys, come in, sweat through their overalls, strip down their overalls, leave them right in the middle of the floor, expecting someone else to pick them up, and off they go to their cabin for a massage and get ready for their next stint. I mean, that's kind of the story of the Formula One prima donnas are legion.
It's funny you say it because I've been watching the show on Netflix and everything, and Christian Coase, he goes, "Well, what is it?" I goes, "It's basically a full hour of listening to how every single F1 driver is the greatest driver to ever live." I'm like, F1 drivers love themselves, some of themselves, to a degree I didn't think was possible, but this show proved me wrong.
Yeah.
So
well,
that is awesome.
And everybody's telling you what doesn't stink day in and day out, and you make a lot of money and what have you. Sooner or later, you're going to believe them, I guess.
And what I mean, honestly, I think like drivers like Alexander Rossi didn't fit. I mean, he was so awkward when coming into IndyCar. We were actually the only show that had him on before he came to his first IndyCar race at St. Pete, so that was pretty cool. That was really nice of him to come on the show before he was an Indy 500 champion, because of drama in Turn 4. Good job, Kimball. Way to be there. We don't give Charlie any breaks. Not since Watkins Glen, we don't. We're Willpower fans. What can you tell you? So anyway, but yeah, lost my train of thought. I just lost it. What was I trying to say?
Great drivers that didn't fit.
Right, exactly. So, Fernando Alonso seems to be like, because I got to meet him at Barber. I was at where he made his first when he was first announcing he was going to do the Indy 500. They did it at Barber Speedway, and we were right there. It was probably the coolest like media experience we've ever kind of been in, because I'm like, there was only 2 rows of seats, maybe 20 seats in total, but there was 300 people in the room, big like TV cameras. I'm sure you're used to looking at your whole career. Well, I had them like right here over my shoulder, and like, me and Missy, we're one of the 2, and we're sitting with our journalist buddies and with Motorsports Tribune and Dave Mulcher and all, and we're sitting in the seats, and everybody else is standing up all around. And Fernando comes in, and it's like all the wind just gets sucked out of the room, and everybody's staring at this guy, and I'm like, I feel so bad for him. This is a lot of pressure, and he's just sitting there, just he's got this like I have a great GoPro of it because I was that close, and the first question was from CNN Telemundo or something. I don't know. That might be a joke. It might not be, but it is kind of a joke because it sounded Spanish to me. I'm not bilingual. I failed Spanish, so it sounds like the language I failed. But it was a very long question. It had to be Spanish. So, so after he's done, Fernando Alonso gives a 3-word Spanish answer, and just sits there, and then everybody starts laughing because it was like everybody felt. I felt so bad for the CNN guy, but the way Fernando answered it, everybody knew what he meant. He was so deadpan. His expression didn't change the entire question, and it broke the silence. I've never felt like an entire room of just tension snap into this awesome kind of feeling. And then he started joking around, and then somebody, I think the next question, Mulcher brought it back, of course, because Mulcher, right? David Mulcher, the consummate professional from motorsport.com, let me tell you. I really love that guy. But he stands up, he goes, what's it like with you and the other F1 drivers? Do you guys get along like IndyCar drivers at all? And that question right there, Fernando starts laughing, and he's laughing for a good 45 seconds without even talking. He's like, do we, and he just starts laughing. Mulcher's just standing laughing because Mulcher knows the deal. He's from...
Knows the answer to the question, yeah.
He grew up in England. He knows the culture and everything. He could have went anywhere, but he came to IndyCar. So, I love the guy. But, and he finally goes, not a 1. I don't talk to a 1. And he finally answered.
Yeah, well,
and it was like a 45-minute presser. It was probably one of the coolest media experiences of like just seeing somebody of that like caliber, and just how the whole thing transpired. Is one of those cool stories that that doesn't ever transfer. Yeah. So.
Well, I'm not sure that Fernando's answer was entirely true. I mean, I've heard stories of epic poker games and things like that. I know he's tight with Robert Kubica and some others. But, Fernando also, wound up in such a bad spot as his Formula One career wrapped up that he just couldn't take it anymore with McLaren and the Honda combination. But, his Ferrari time wasn't as successful as it perhaps could have been. Fernando is one of those guys who is ultimately skilled, but just did not have that element that you talked about earlier, which is luck. Mm-hmm. He also made what turned out to be terrible decisions about where to go when, which is kind of something my old colleague David Hobbs used to talk about all the time. He said, I'd think I had something all figured out, and I'd pull the trigger, and it would blow up in my face, going for that team or that car or that series. And I think there's been a certain amount of that in Fernando's career. But having said that, it's definitely true that I think the IndyCar guys are a whole lot more sociable. And again, it goes back to pressure. The Formula One guys, I have respect for every single one of them. They're all fast, they're all capable, but the lifestyle is just so difficult because of the worldwide pressure they're under. Yeah, in NASCAR, the pressure is that you're racing every damn week for, 2/3 to 3/4 of the year, and that wears you out after a while. So,
Sure.
everybody has their own issues. There are huge challenges here, but the other side of the coin is there's also a behind the scenes lifestyle that I'm sure is incredibly rewarding to all of these guys, because they wanted to be race car drivers, and here they are, at the top of their game.
I mean, like the price you got to pay to do what you love, right? Exactly. So, and that's
take rough with the smooth.
Exactly. The good with the bad, and I mean, the culture is what it is. You can't change it. You just got to either go with it, or it will spew you out, and you'll be disgruntled.
Yep.
Well, Bob, I think that was just a great talk. Really, thank you for coming on. I'm stumbling over myself. Before
I do it all the time.
Yeah, but you do it professionally, and you get to do it live. So you make it.
I get paid to stumble around all the time.
But you make it look effortlessly. That's and the best ones make it look effortlessly, because it's not. It's so hard. It really can. About.
I
mean, some make it easy for you. A lot do not. But but in racing, I think we get lucky with a lot of good personalities, though, because you almost have to be able to get the sponsors' money. So.
Yep. Well, I always tell people, what I like to do is tell stories, and sports is just full of stories, and certainly motorsports is full of great stories in all of its diversity and all those different personalities you talked about earlier. So, I've been doing this for almost 40 years, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many just questions and like hours and hours of just like, I mean, I'm a question asker. That's all I can come up with 10 other questions to every one thing you say, and that's why I get screwed up sometimes. So I try to go for the best ones, but I mean, would love to have you back on again. But what I was trying to say is, you are definitely, I mean, you've been broadcasting for Formula E. It's been a series that we've talked about on the show. I'm not there yet. I don't know why I'm not there yet with it. I mean, we're open wheel fans through and through. Everything open wheel, we are about it. Even sports car to a degree, and I mean, as a matter of fact, we were just talking about Fernando Alonso just today. Fernando Alonso, it's announced Hartley will be taking over his spot for Le Mans. So that we'll be talking about that later with Missy and Christian. So, but I mean, we'll see what happens with that. But you've been calling the races for Formula E, and if you were trying to basically tell me about Formula E to somebody that is very interested in open wheel racing, IndyCar, F1, and all that, and for some reason Formula E is just not catching my attention. Why? If you had to answer a reason why, and then tell me the best reason why I should be interested in it, what would it be?
Well, let me tell you the reason you're not interested in it, and I think I can sum it up in one word, is the sound. I guess that's actually two words, but noise. I've always subscribed to the theory that race cars, to be really entertaining, race cars have to look and sound and perform in a way that makes me think, oh my God, there is no way in the world that I could do that. And so a lot of people have said, well, Formula E, all electric racing is not appealing because the cars don't deafen me. They don't make a lot of noise. And that's true, they don't. But that's part of their mission statement. Formula E is what I call a statement series. It's meant to take racing into urban centers where emissions-free mobility is so important to combat air quality issues. That's the essence of why we're racing electric cars, and why manufacturers worldwide are pouring untold amounts of money into developing electric vehicle technologies. Now, totally apart from that whole political and technological reason for creating a platform to develop these technologies, is it's a whole lot of fun. These guys, the drivers, are terrific personalities. They are extremely well qualified. there are no, here's an expression that I hate, there are no ride buyers in Formula E. All of these guys are paid. They're all professional. They all have great resumes. So you've got the compelling story from the human side. The cars are different, but they are race cars. They have enormous torque. They have over 300 horsepower. We were in the first season what we call the Generation 2 car, which eliminated the need for the mid-race pit stops because the batteries will now hold enough charge and retain enough energy with recharging during the race to go the whole race distance. The Generation 3 car is on the drawing boards right now. It's going to have, if everything works out, it's going to have over 600 horsepower. I mean, Porsche's bringing out an electric vehicle called the Taycan that's going to have 600 plus horsepower, all electric, quick recharge, long battery life and electric range. And this, I think, is part of the fascination of Formula E, is that we're seeing results technologically that will contribute to the cars that we're all going to be driving down the road. I mean, I'm sitting in Paris right now. Paris intends to ban all petroleum-fueled vehicles by, I think the date is 2030. You won't be able to buy a gasoline or diesel-powered vehicle to drive in Paris in a little over a decade. So that's where the business is going. Will the internal combustion engine go away? No. We'll always be able to play with gas-powered cars. But the door is open for this kind of technology, and it's fun to be a part of that sort of series. So, what I tell people when they say, well, why should I like Formula E? Approach it with an open mind. Come to a race if you can. We got a big doubleheader in mid-July in Brooklyn, New York, which is certainly accessible to millions and millions of people.
Oh, yeah.
And come see what it's all about. The cars are cool looking. We call them the Batmobiles. They perform really well. There's great personalities to watch. The racing is fun. There's a lot of contact. If you go to races and watch them for the crashes, you got to check out Formula One. That's the Paris race we just had in the rain, in a hailstorm, was chaos. It was wonderful.
A hailstorm? You guys didn't call it?
We got hail. No, see, we had gone 52 races from the beginning of the series without a wet race. We thought, we are the ultimate problem to climate change. It won't rain when Formula E comes to town, but we got dumped on last Saturday, and it was pretty cool to watch. Not so cool for the drivers, but it was a fun race.
Well, yeah, and were there any rooster tails since there's no back wing?
Yep.
Or awesome.
Yep. Well, it's not the rear wing. A lot of the rooster tail is created by the fact that we run on treaded all-weather Michelin tires.
Sure.
Tires especially made so we don't have slicks and wets. You run on the same set of tires. Each car gets two sets of new tires every weekend for practice qualifying in the race. And so tire management as well as energy management are the keys to the series. And we get some great races. 8 races thus far in the season. We've had 8 different winners. We've had 7 different pole sitters, I think is the number now. Every team has scored points. Almost every driver, save one, Tom Dillman from France, has yet to score a point. It's a great battle. You just never know what's going to happen. And we have a good time. And we have 2 American teams, Andretti and the what's called the JOX Dragon team, which is owned by Jay Penske, Roger's kid.
Okay, Dragon, right on. Yeah, everybody from IndyCar knows Dragon, right on.
Yep.
So, I did hear about this new generation car. It's just one charge per race. I like that a lot. I didn't honestly like the biggest thing that I didn't like was the 2 pit stop thing, and the car you finish with, the car to start. Yeah. That. But and the only other I like the car. And then it looks like it stopped. It's the best way I could describe it. And the Batmobile is perfect because that's what because the back fairings are they swoop up and they produce the downforce a back wing would do anyway. So it makes sense. That's why I was like rooster tails because there's nothing to stop the top of the back of the tire So and. But yeah, and the other biggest question about Formula E is Tesla. Why is Tesla not part of the series?
Good question. You'd have to ask Elon Musk. I have no idea.
I would love to.
Well,
do you have his number?
Musk would want to go with his own deal. Now, the thing about Formula E, these cars are very, very controlled in terms of common parts for cost savings. It seems to me, I recall somebody was trying to develop a racing series using Teslas exclusively, but I don't think it got off the ground. I may be wrong about that, but I haven't heard much about it in a long, long time. In Formula E, everybody gets the same tub. It's made by Dallara. It's got massive diffusers, which is where your rooster tails might be coming from as well. Huge ground effects, a lot of downforce.
Mm-hmm. They've been known to do that.
Yep. You can't. There's a lot on the car you cannot change, but there's a lot of things you can. You can develop your own powertrain, electric motors, inverters, electronic software, engine management systems, suspensions, and that kind of thing.
Okay.
So there's room for innovation and some creative thinking. And there will be more as time goes by, but it's a step-by-step process. We're coming to the end of season 5. There's a new 5-year plan, or however long the term is. And as I mentioned, that Gen 3 car, which is going to be a huge step up in power and performance. So it's kind of fun to be here from the very beginning, and looking forward to what happens. I hope I'm a part of it for a long time, because it is good fun. And I actually get to go to the races, which is something a lot of motorsports don't do anymore. We call races from studios in far-off locations, rather than going to the racetrack and actually, shaking a guy's hand and looking him in the eye and getting the kind of honest answers to your questions that are a lot tougher to get by email or what have you. And look, I'm sitting in Paris, for crying out loud.
I know.
I'm going to Monaco next week.
That's so
I was
awesome.
in Rome 2 weeks ago. You can't beat this.
Yeah, that is really awesome. I mean, you get to visit like some of the greatest cities around the world, and you get paid for it. And
Yep.
No, spare no expense for Mr. Bob Varsha, right?
Yeah. Don't weep for me, pal. I'm having a great time.
Well, Mr. Varsha, again, you know what? You sold me. I'm going to check out the next Formula E race, and I encourage everybody else out to go into it with an open mind. Definitely check it out. We now have some more information about it, and you know what? I am now intrigued. So, Mr. Varsha, sir, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Do you have a Twitter where people can reach out to you and say hi?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, and I'm not hiding. It's at Bob Varsha, and I'm on Facebook, and I'm on social media. Media. Yeah. See, I told you I'd do it.
It's starting to. Gotta love social media. Really, it was weird to get used to, and then all of a sudden, it just kind of clicks. Right? You still get used to it.
I like it. I like interacting with people. So if you got a question, go find me on Twitter or wherever and let fly.
Definitely. And he's a very nice person, and he'll answer any questions. So, again, Bob, thank you for coming on the show. And, looking forward to having you on again, maybe talking some more F1 and maybe some Formula E as well next time, huh?
Excellent.
Right on.
Okay. Thanks very much, Frank. And say hey to Missy for me.
I definitely will. Thank you, Bob.
Cheers.